Guys, a week ago we were talking about Alphonso Davies' long-term future at the German Giants, and since then Bayern have sacked their manager, brought in Thomas Tuchel, the former Chelsea boss, German coach as well. What does this mean for the long-term future? Again, we're talking about Alphonso Davies, Jules. What does this mean for Alphonso Davies with Thomas Tuchel taking over at Bayern?
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. I mean, first, news of a coach like Nagelsmann suddenly just, leaving, and then you have Thomas Tuchel coming in. But the style of football that we've known Thomas Tuchel playing for is when he was at Chelsea. I mean, he likes to play with that four in the back. So this could actually suit Alphonso in my eyes, having him at that left back, because, having him as a wing back, there's a lot of competition in that Bayern squad. And you look at guys like Coleman, for instance, Sané, these guys could play that position, Cancelo as well. But, I think for Alphonso Davies, he's that left back that could have the freedom to go forward because the team's designed, to protect him as a defensive player. But if you do have him as that wing back, Kev, I mean, I think there's maybe a risk, and competition could be different in terms of Thomas Tuchel's eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thomas Tuchel, when he took over at Chelsea, they were in a very different position from where Bayern are. Of course, still in the Champions League. Bayern, it's just been a lot closer in the Bundesliga. You don't expect that with Bayern. They expect to be 10, 15 points clear at this stage of the season, don't they? So that's why, obviously, Nagelsmann's gone. There's obviously other issues as well. But Tuchel coming in relation to Alphonso Davies, I think as a club, I don't think it really changes anything from Alphonso Davies' point of view. I think he will continue to play the football. The team, as Julian touched on last week, and he's just mentioning there, is kind of built around him and the style of Alphonso Davies and getting forward. I think he probably will, as you say, Julian, go with the back four. Again, suits Alphonso Davies. And they'll dominate possession for a majority of the games that they're going to be playing in. So again, it suits Alphonso Davies. So there's very little change for him in terms of coaching going in. I think the only one thing I would say, though, Kel, sorry, might help him defensively. I think
that's what I was going to say. Is Tuchel too defensive-minded, though, for Alphonso?
Well, when he went into Chelsea, it was about shoring up the defence, getting them to stop conceding goals and build from that. And I think he went a little bit more negative compared to how we'd seen Tuchel prior to that. But that was a necessity, Jules. Sometimes you've got to do that. Sometimes you've got to get results. And he saw the defence was a weakness, went with a narrow back four with a sitter in front of them, and he got results. So, as I said before, they're not in the same position, so it's not necessarily going to transpire that way. But the defensive side of Chelsea certainly improved under Tuchel when he took over.
Yeah, and if you go a few weeks back, Bayern did play with the back four against Stuttgart, Union Berlin, PSG in the Champions League as well, and they were successful. They got results, and I think Tuchel could easily go back to that setup. But I think where it went wrong was maybe the rotation of players, under Nagelsmann, managing the guys of like Thomas Müller and those egos. So, if Tuchel's going to come in there, they need the points, right? So they're going to be defensive, but they also have that offensive powerhouse. And Alphonso Davies definitely brings that side to the game where he may have more freedom to go forward, but at the same time, Tuchel's going to make sure that team is protecting that defensive side of the game for Alphonso Davies in case he's out of position.
Is it that clear in Germany, Jules, having played there, that they have to be 10 points clear, as I was saying before? Outsiders looking in, that's what I would think. Is it that way in Germany when you're over there?
Oh, no, for sure. I think, you look at, prior to Qatar World Cup, Bayern were 10 points clear, and they were running away with it. They were running away with it.
And then the break was the worst thing that could have happened to them.
Well, they have other tasks to worry about, too, like Champions League as well, the Pokal. But you go back to even Ancelotti's days, he won the double back-to-back seasons and then still got fired because he wasn't able to manage some of the experienced players around that time. But there's so much pressure at that club. And I think, if they're seeing the team not performing against a team like Leverkusen, their last defeat there, the tabloids are saying this was the worst performance in the history of Bayern Munich. So when they do say that in the press at Bayern, that's one sign there, and that means the exit door for the head coach.
Nagelsmann had so many issues with some of the bigger players at the club. Manuel Neuer, you mentioned Thomas Müller as well. Is there enough big voices there that a third coaching change now with Alphonso being at Bayern, is this going to have any effect on him having a new voicing in the locker room, or is there enough other big voices as far as players to kind of shield him from that?
Yeah, I think, Bayern's always made up of and you could even see their front office, like Oliver Kahn, Salihamidzic, they're involved in the club at a higher level, and they're ex-players. So I think when you look at Bayern Munich and the experienced guys that the younger players may turn to, like Thomas Müller, Manuel Neuer, I would even throw in a Kimmich as well. Those are the leaders of that locker room, and I think there's always a generation of leaders that manage that group, and Alphonso will always be under their wing. So, from my experience too, it's always having the respect of older and experienced players, and I think Alphonso understands that culture in Germany. He's going to lean on these guys, listen to them, But it's certainly a bit different when you see him with the national team, right?
Yeah. But adding to it as well, Kels, what we spoke about the other week with Alphonso Davies, he's finding his voice himself. He's maturing all the time. He will become a voice, if he's not already a voice, within that locker room, certainly now and beyond. And he's now got to establish himself as a real leader within that club.
Tuchel, Davies, Bayern under pressure right from the get-go when they get back from the international break. April 1st, they take on Dortmund. 10 days later, Tuchel will be back in England, this time in a Champions League tie with Bayern against Manchester City.